All right. Okay, guys. Everyone listening? This is so weird. I've never done this on camera before. All right. So we just finished talking about how we dress the stock in the right order so that we make sure to get this thing square so it's actually usable for our project, right? So the very first operation we're going to have to do with our rough board is cut it to rough length, right? How long are we going to make that past what our final finish length is going to be? Half an inch, right? So I want a board final length that's 14 inches long. So I'm going to put a little mark here at 14 and a half. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Again, this is a rough length, right? So I have a little mark right here at 14 and a half, and I'm going to cut off this part here as the waist. Okay. Now, how much material does the saw blade actually remove? 1/8. About 1/8 of an inch, right? Which part of this line do I want to have my blade positioned on? On the waist side, right? So I need to make sure I line up this mark with, so that the blade is positioned within the waist in this material, okay? All right, so I'm ready to go. Let's talk about this machine a little bit, okay? It's called a Mitre Saw. Why is it called a Mitre Saw?
Because it cuts.
What's that? Because it cuts what, James?
Across the grain.
It cuts across the grain, yeah. We never ever cut with the grain or along the grain with this machine. It's only ever across the grain. What is a miter? Anyone know what a miter is? A miter is an angle, right? So this machine is actually really good at cutting very accurate angles. We can take this thing and move the bed of it just by pushing down on this button here and adjusting it to different angles. And it has stops that lock it at common angles that we would use, 45 degrees, 22.5 degrees, 90 degrees. So that's kind of why it's called a Mitre saw. It also cuts a miter this way, so the saw can also tilt in either direction to cut compound miters, or miters in both directions, right? Most commonly for what we're doing in here, this is going to be a saw that cuts 90 degrees, right? Okay, this particular model is also what we call a sliding miter saw. So it has a slide on it to allow the travel to come out, and we can cut wider boards with this saw, okay? So because it does that, which way do we want to be cutting this board with this in mind? Am I going to plunge and pull toward me, or am I going to bring it out?
Bring it up, down, pull back.
Right. So I always want to be cutting. A rule we use in here is that we always want to cut our board in the direction opposite the rotation of the cutter. Okay? So the saw blade moves in this direction. So I'm going to bring my saw out towards me, pull the trigger on, plunge it down slow and smooth, and push away from me. Okay? That's the safest way to use this machine. How close can I get my hands to the blade?
6 inches.
Yeah, about 6 inches is a good rule for most of the machines in here. There is actually a line on the saw, and it is about 6 inches, actually a little bit more than 6 inches away from the blade. This is a good rule to follow. Okay, 6 inches or the line that's actually on the bed of the saw. Okay, you guys shouldn't be having your fingers in closer than that line. So 6 inches is the magic number. Okay? What other safety equipment do I need to be using when? Right, I need eye protection on it. Okay? So you guys know that all the eye protection is right across from my office there in the rack. Please keep these things in good shape. I don't want to see these things lying on the floor. Make sure that they stay in good shape. Okay. So safety glasses on. Do I need ear protection when using this saw?
Yeah, no.
Ear protection is a good idea. It's not going to be too loud right now, but when we're all working in here and we got the dust collector on and everybody's using machinery, I actually recommend we all wear ear protection like all the time in here, right? It's just a good habit to get into. So again, all the earmuffs are across from my office on the wall there. Okay. When we have a rough board, because right now we're breaking out rough stock, what if I have a board that's really twisted or maybe it has a big bow in it? How do I want to position this uneven board on the table? Right. Yeah, steady on the table, right? So basically I don't want to have this thing rocking all over the place, because this machine can actually kick back on us as well. And kickback is what happens when wood changes as it's being cut and it pinches in on the blade, and then it causes restriction to the blade, and then the blade does things that we don't want it to do. Right? Really dangerous on the table saw. This machine's just going to go bang and kick up on you like this. Okay? So we're going to go stable on the table is kind of the thing that we say. But ultimately, the board has to be in contact with the table right here, right where it's being cut, and at the back. Okay, so if we have a board with a big bow in it, we're going to cut it like a happy face, so that it's stable on the table. It's actually touching the table right where the blade is going to be contacting it. Okay, that's going to prevent, if we had it going the other way, and our board's like this, now when we cut through it, the board's going to come down as the tension is released in the wood, and it's going to pinch that blade, and now we've got a problem, right? So, yeah, so it has to contact the table and the fence at the point where the blade goes in. What if we have a board where it's not really possible to do that? We can do a double cut, right? First of all, we can try to flip it or position it so that it does work. Failing that, we can do a double cut, okay? What is a double cut?
Cut halfway, flip it, cut it like that.
Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut the board about halfway through the wood. Okay, so we're going to make a saw cut right here. Right? We're going to make a saw cut right there. We're going to slide the board over. We're going to make another saw cut. So basically I've just got a double wide kerf, or a giant kerf right here. Right? And then I'm going to position the board. I can either flip it over, or I can use it even in the same orientation, but slide it into the middle and then make my final cut all the way through. And this wide kerf at the top here just allows some room so that the blade's not going to get pinched when I go all the way through. Okay? So this is actually a really good practice if we're cutting really big material too, right? Even things that appear to be straight and flat, if they're big timbers, it's a good idea to do this double cut. All right? We ready to go? Okay, so I've got my mark on here against the fence. Got my safety glasses on, making sure that my hand is beyond the 6-inch mark. I'm going to position my blade right where it needs to be. Saw on. Whoop. Let me turn the power on.
How come it's not working?
And we're back. Okay. Saw on. Okay. Now I'd like you guys to leave the saw engaged in the wood until it stops, and then you can bring it up. Okay. It's just, again, it's one of those safe practices. It's a good habit to get into. Now we have a board that is cut to rough length, and we're ready for the next step.